can't believe I'm back on this beach. Not necessarily this particular spot, but Siesta Key in general. And we'll get to the magnitude of this particular spot later on. But this particular tribute is built around my parents' affinity with this place and how it all came together. But before I go any further, I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming here today to honor what our parents asked my sister and I to do years ago when they got here. This is where they wanted their final resting place to be, and I am honored and blessed that some of you came across town. Some of you came from, maybe I'm biased, but I think one of the greatest cities in the United States, our hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And those of you who had to travel that far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've done a lot of these speeches, hundreds of them. I feel like I've been in front of been in front of people for the majority of my life, and I love it. It's a passion of mine. But I will tell you that this has been the hardest speech to write because of the magnitude of the finality of Tara and I's parents. And I started to write it, then I ripped it up. Started to write it, I ripped it up again. And I finally settled on this. And so it's called Little Lombardi Love. And I hope you like it. Now, this chapter of my parents' lives are going to end today. But it didn't start here. I'm really good at a lot of things, but Tara, I had to look this up. The story actually begins exactly 1,073 miles north of here in this mega metropolis of Finleyville, Pennsylvania. I'm kidding, because when I give you the census numbers here in a minute, you're going to realize I'm really kidding. It's about 40 minutes south of the city of Pittsburgh. The latest census numbers there that I could find was Finleyville currently has 373 people living in it. And population has dropped over the years. But as I go through this, it will give you an idea of, and this is why still to this day, I have this affinity with small towns. And so in 1975, my parents bought this place. This there I did not have to look up, by the way. Our address, RD1, Box 485A, Finleyville, Pennsylvania, 15332. And in case anybody in this audience is interested in calling our old phone number, and if anybody does, I'd be really interested to see who answers the phone since we've been gone there for so many years. But it was area code 412-348-5035. And I was 5. My sister's 4 years younger than me. And I remember us getting there. And I'm a 5-year-old kid, and I'm looking around. I mean, we had 1.5 acres, almost 2 acres of ground. I'm just like, wow, whoa. And I'm looking at the neighbors' houses, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was blown away. And one of the first memories of the yard that we had, just like my uncle, sitting here in the audience today, my father's older brother and my dad, I had an affinity with motorcycles. And I remember the first motorcycle that my father bought me was a little 50cc mini bike, and I rode that thing around our yard all day long. And I was just like, wow. And we started settling in as a family, and one of the common threads that you're going to hear throughout this tribute is about family and how important that was to, whether it was the four of us or we were very blessed with whether it was my mother's side or my father's side, how close we all were as a group. And it was something that was instilled in us from the time we were kids, and it meant so much. And as it started to kind of come along, we started just settle into this new place. And I remember my mother and father starting to build relationships with our neighbors. And what's so amazing is even after they left, they still kept in touch with a lot of these people. It was an idyllic place to grow up. We started settling into the community. I remember we joined our local Catholic church, St. Francis of Assisi, and Mass every Sunday. You're going to hear this. We were a big sports family, so I remember during football season, our priest made sure that 12 o'clock Mass that we would go to. I remember he had us out of there on the nose, 12:45, so we could make the 1 o'clock kickoff. And we lived about 7 minutes from our church. And we got home and boom, right in front of TV6, to turn on Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was just little things like that in this little town. We had this hometown pharmacy, Scalpatello's, long before Walgreens and CVS. This was a family-owned pharmacy that my parents, they developed relationships with these people. And I remember when I, was old enough to start, getting our prescriptions, and I developed relationships with these people. It's just things that you don't, not that I took for granted back then, but as you grow older, you realize, wow, these things are just special because they're fleeting, We had our local marketplace called Dub's Market. Never forget. I ended up graduating with the gentleman's daughter and Ken Dubs, who owned Dub's Market. Again, our mother did the majority of our shopping at Giant Eagle, but I remember again when I was old enough to start going to the market, she'd say, Chris, can you go to Dub's to get XYZ? And I became friends with the owner. We had these amazing conversations. I remember when I'd get home, my mother was like, where in the world have you been? I just sent you to Dub's. I'm like, Mom, I was talking to Mr. Dubs. She's like, of course you were. Did you have a good time, Chris? I said, yes, I did. And she knew that early on this was my deal. I had this ability to talk to people, and I love people. And I'm going to talk about that later on. But it was just these kind of things growing up. And I'm not saying you can't have those in a bigger town, but when you grow up in a small town like we did, and as the years went on, when you start to kind of put all this together, these are times I would not trade for anything. We're a big sports family, and as we started to get older, I started playing Pee Wee football. I started playing football when I was 6 years old. I was very blessed that our father was my coach. He coached me all the way up until I got to junior high. And shortly after I started playing, my sister got into cheerleading. And we were amazing cheerleaders, by the way, Tara. And I can still remember the Saturday mornings. We'd pack everything into the car. And my sister had her cheerleader uniform on, I had my football pads on, and we would go to our games. And again, just as the years went on, just look back at those times, like, man, I want to recreate that over and over again, and you can't, and I'm just so thankful that they happened. And we started progressing we started taking family vacations. And our first place, don't know why, but our first place that my parents chose was Nags Head, North Carolina. And I remember the first year that we got there, and by the way, Tara, I looked this hotel up because we stay at the same hotel every single year. It's called John Yancey Hotel, and still in business to this day. I remember the first year we got there, and I'm looking at these sand dunes. Kid from Pittsburgh. Now, we had been to the Jersey Shore before, okay? My grandfather had cousins from New York and New Jersey that lived in Wildwood, New Jersey. And so we had seen sand and we had seen water, but not like this. This was nuts. I remember saying to my mother, I'm watching people hang gliding from sand dunes. I'm like, what? And we had many, many great years there. Then we started migrating south to Tampa, Clearwater. And we had some great years there. Then this is where